Hello, everyone. It has been too long since we've been here with you all for a DealerOn webinar. I missed you so much. I hope you're all well. It's been crazy, busy, exciting around here, and we are still riding that NADA high from getting to see so many of you in person. For those of you I didn't meet, my name is Erin Zaborac. I am your host today and the Director of Marketing for DealerOn. Whether you're a DealerOn customer or you aren't just yet, I promise this session will be educational. You're going to walk away with some action items. Spring is almost here, so consider this your head start on some spring cleaning as well. I'd much rather work on inventory updates than cleaning out my closets any day. I am very excited to have a big group of people here to go through the content with you all. We've brought along just a few of the many people who work on our product, our customer success, and our customer support teams. Let me introduce Cesar Hernandez, Tony Reyes, Dale Benier, and Javier Urbina. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you,
You're
Erin.
welcome.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Erin. Happy to be here.
All right. Okay, let's cover a few logistics before we get started. I see people still joining. We are recording the training today. We will send you both the deck and the recording after the webinar. We've got a ton to cover today, so I might push the team along just to make sure we have time to get through it all. But you should see a Q&A section here in Zoom. I'm going to be hanging out there, so if you have questions or if you have your own best practice tips to share, type them in that Q&A area. We'll bring things up live as time permits. You all consistently bring the great comments and questions in there. So keep me busy today, will you please? Okay, I think we're good. Let's get started. When we put together the outline of today's webinar, there were a lot of ideas on where to focus. And it reminded me that we really have two very distinct sides of the house when it comes to inventory. Both are critical, but depending on your role at the dealership, you might only work on one side of the info on this next slide here. So let's move forward. The truth is, you can't merchandise the vehicles on your website until you get the data over into the system. And that info includes VINs, stock numbers, price fields, incentives, photos, everything. It all gets sent into the website provider. And then once it's there, then you can focus on the output on your website. That look and feel of the pricing display, including those incentives, photo, video, just about the most important parts of inventory merchandising. So guess what? We're going to cover a little bit of everything in the next 55 minutes. So Cesar, let's start with the feet. Inventory management. Let's give everyone a quick crash course on how this all works. This is what you do every day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. So to commence, as Erin mentioned, right, the first and most critical, perhaps, step in our inventory ingestion and process is, of course, how we configure the feeds that are inbound to DealerOn. So here, if we can skip forward to the subsequent slide, we'll show you a little bit about the types of feeds that we accommodate. So for those that are more techie in the dealership world, right, we can accommodate both API and FTP, SFTP more commonly, feed syndication protocols. FTP more commonly used rather for third-party providers such as vAuto, etc. APIs typically are more heavily used by OEM providers and the various programs that syndicate data to us in a more proactive fashion, right? In regards to how the data is configured in the slide that we're looking at here, it gives you just a brief, a general overview of how that data flows within the platform. So you'll see in the image here that we take, again, inventory data from both OEM and third-party sources that then flows into DealerOn. And behind the scenes, there's a logic that we facilitate, right, to configure that inventory as you request it from us to display finally, on site and to export to third-party sources that may be, require that data. So once it hits the DealerOn platform, the CMS, we format the data into, we segregate it rather based on dealership, typically by dealer IDs that are provided by the third parties or location, dealership name. We have a variety of ways to segment that data into smaller pools of inventory that may be required by your group or individual dealerships, right, to then associate to websites on our end. The way that we segment that is through the use of lot sources and lots. And so you'll see that broken down on the right-hand side of the slide there. We have the data inbound from the feeds. We segment it based on group or dealer. We can then segment that further into what we call lot sources, which are collections of inventory, typically segmented by new, used, often also by type. So if we have in-transit inventory from the various programs that supplement that, we could format that in its own lot source. From that pool, we can segment it further into lots, which can then be easily shared across the entire platform quickly. And again, facilitating for us to have consistent and accurate data for all of the locations that you may need that inventory to show up at.
This is super nerdy, but this is important nerdy. And I say nerdy as a compliment because it truly shows the different configurations. Different dealer groups want different things. I want all inventory on all pages. I want this on this. It truly shows the capabilities, but the importance of making sure things are set up properly from the jump, right?
Absolutely. Additionally, I would note that we can filter further from here. So if you have some unique requirements whereby you are utilizing tags at the dealership level to further refine or collect inventory as you needed, right, to share across your various locations, or if you're utilizing maybe specific naming scheme where you have a prefix before stock numbers, right? We can filter beyond the lot level, even down to the individual page level, right, to facilitate your needs. And so we just want to highlight the flexibility that's available through the CMS platform here. If you have additional questions or you really want to get caught in the weeds in regards to, how the sausage is made, for lack of a better term, reach out to your CSM and we can coordinate an additional call where we can discuss details.
Yeah,
We can move
absolutely.
over to the next slide. Very good. And so, Erin, you were going to make additional comments there?
Yes. So we glanced over it when we send the deck out. We want you to know we're going to show you a lot of DIY today. We're going to show you how to manage things. Cesar mentioned data and the feed. That's one thing you're going to want to reach out to the team for. So if you don't have access to the CMS, the information's here. Email help@dealeron.com. There's a few sections in the CMS where inventory management is going to come into play on the things that we show today. But lots of ways. You can email, you can call. Cesar mentioned your CSM, your customer success manager. That's your person. That's your DealerOn person who hopefully is a best friend of yours. They can help you with everything we're going to showcase today. So they're your first stop in the line of inventory defense. But these are the sections inside the CMS that you will play with everything that we're covering today.
Excellent. So I will make a quick comment that beyond being able to really dictate how the data flows, how it's collected, how it's shared across the platform, the permissions that we can provide you all at the dealership can also be assigned granularly, which means if you have some agents that you would like to be involved with managing page content, managing leads, etc., but not necessarily facilitate access to the critical inventory setups that we configure for you all, you do have the ability to gate it. As Erin mentioned, there are ample resources in also providing guidance over how to interface with the various UIs to make the changes that you require at the dealership. And then last but not least on this slide here, before I hand it over to my peers, I do want to touch on some best practices in regards to inventory. Erin already touched on a critical piece, which is, again, you can lean on us. We are your partners. You've got our commitment to be your advocates in working with the various third parties, working with the programs to ultimately address the root cause behind issues, make sure that we can facilitate the requests that you submit in a timely fashion. That said, there's a few steps, right, that you can take at the dealership level to make the whole step easier and make inventory more manageable. So first and foremost, of course, is implementing a simplified, consistent practice for how you manage inventory, how you configure the feed data, etc. Makes it a better shopping experience for your visitors. It allows for faster, more consistent troubleshooting across your various locations. And that's not to say you cannot have, right, unique setups for individual stores for the group, but a best practice is, again, to ensure you have consistency, ensure that what can be streamlined is streamlined. Additionally, when we ensure that the data that we configure at the DMS, third-party inventory provider tools, or through the various OEM platforms that allow dealers to interface with that data, if we're consistent, ensuring that inventory is kept up to date, and that, again, we are accurate with the data that we're inputting, it facilitates, right, accurate, timely, and consistent entries on the front end on your website. So some common issues are poor or inconsistent photo quality, ensuring that you guys are being consistent with any branding, overlays, etc., imagery that you're using and syndicating through the various feeds will make it a better experience for your shoppers. Ensuring that we're consistent with the data that we're parsing or syndicating over from those providers also helps. Um, Again, when we have conflicting information such as prices that don't align for various feed sources, if we have parameters like vehicle type, for example, that's not consistent across various feeds, that can cause issues on our end. So again, ensuring that the data is consistent globally is very important. Delays in updating inventory as sold or updating any pricing that you might need to, modify at the dealership level at the feed source as quickly as possible ensures that the website will display that promptly. And then lastly, making sure that you monitor inventory, monitor all of the information, right, that you ultimately have at the location to mitigate duplicate entries for VINs. When we have those, the various feeds provided to us having duplication for VIN data, oftentimes that can lead to issues on the front end. Again, all technical stuff that we're happy to facilitate on your behalf. Reach out to us through help@dealeron.com or calling our support lines, and we're happy to assist. With all
Awesome.
that said,
Yeah,
I'll pass it over.
this is the most important, and it is the trickiest to stay on top of sometimes. So thank you for those best practices. One thing we're going to talk about at the end of the session, actually, Tony, go back to that Sims Light. Thank you. Is for GM dealers specifically. I held this to the end in case we have any non-GM dealers here, which I know we do. We're going to talk about our smart inventory manager that is now available to you, will be available to more OEMs in the future, but lots of D2C2 integration benefits through our tool. So stay tuned to the end of the webinar and we will talk more about our smart inventory manager. So, but for now, let's say we got the data, we got the feed, it's all handled, everything sunshine and roses. Now we get to start merchandising it on the website. So, Tony, you are one of our customer experience managers on the customer success team. So, you and that fantastic team work with dealers every day on this merchandising. So, you've got some best practices here. I know the team is going to have some more, but let's start with the SRP, the search results page.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Erin. And like Erin mentioned, and my colleagues as well, right? Once you have that inventory, I think the most important and crucial part is how that inventory looks on your site, right? And whether it be to yourself, to the folks that work in your dealership, but mainly the customers, right? The customer experience and what they see when they log onto your site, whether it be on a tablet, a computer, or even their phone, makes a world of difference. And so I kind of want to talk through some of the best practices regarding your SRP, right? I'm going to start out with the filtering. When it comes to filters, one of the biggest things that my team always encourages their clients to do is have the most relevant filters at the top of the page. So if you're familiar, our SRPs, our filters are on the left-hand side. What I mean by most relevant, you probably want, make, model, definitely year, trim, things of that sort. The things that the customers are looking for the minute they hop onto a search results page. And then you want to ensure that it's easy for any customer to kind of understand what does this filter mean by using a generic filter or a generic terminology within those filters. Drivetrains and transmissions are probably the biggest things that we want to keep within the filters. Any of those other little small intricate details, like a V6 or a V8 or a 6.2, we can keep those really on the VDP. Those are, once your customers are able to filter out and find a vehicle that they like by any filter that they choose, that we want to leave the details for the VDP because that way they can really hone in and understand, hey, I'm looking for a V8, but I want, instead of a 5.3, I want a 6.2. Once they find the class of vehicle, if you will, what that they're looking for, they can definitely navigate to the VDP and look at it that way. Another thing I want to touch on is the default sorting, right, for both new and used inventory. We always recommend to have several options, whether it be price point holistically for the vehicle, whether it be financing, lease, year, distance, so on and so forth. I'm going to touch on that a little bit on those specific filters coming up in the next slide here. But we really want to, when it comes to filtering, I always recommend, and we always recommend for every dealer to have the most amount of filters available for sorting. That way, you give your customers the most options that they can sort and filter to their needs.
Yeah, and I know we've got some instructional slides here, so we're not going to cover everything in great detail, but one of the things that we wanted to showcase here on the next slide is this gives your customers flexibility as well. So yes, dealers, you have the capability to set the default, but customers can do a few things on your website that is with DealerOn. So they can switch between a grid layout on desktop or just looking at one vehicle straight across, and then changing that support option. Another thing our websites have, Tony, is infinite scroll. So tell us infinite scroll. I know what I think it is, but I want to make sure I'm right.
Yep. So infinite scroll is a fantastic feature that we have. If you remember, if you go to, most dealer sites, when you're scrolling on an SRP, you've got to either pick how many vehicles do you want on your SRP or how many pages do you want to click through. With the infinite scroll option with DealerOn, you're able to actually go onto an SRP and continuously scroll, and so that way it's able to crawl the entire inventory, whether it be new or used, without having to go through the extra step of what page do I need to go to or how many vehicles do I want on a page. And much less, if a customer finds a vehicle they like on page one, by the time they go to page two or three, they're probably thinking to themselves, man, where's that vehicle that I really liked that I saw? It's on page one. Then they kind of have to do an extra step or two to go back and find that vehicle. So the infinite scroll is a fantastic feature that I always encourage everyone to use, because it's just one less thing that a customer that's looking for a vehicle has to do within their buying experience.
Absolutely. So a few move forward and we'll show this slide, which is just a how-to that we're not going to cover. I do want to chat. So Luis, I see your question. How do we know what the most used filters are? Here's what I would say is it's going to differ obviously by region, by dealer, all of that information, but this is really spring cleaning right now. If you haven't looked at your filters, color might be 7 down. So we want to make sure that if that's something you want it scooted up, we absolutely can. Becky, your question, sometimes it's messy where it can be crew cab pickup. We will never make changes by default on things like this, especially with inventory, without checking. So this is one of those things that we want you to have the conversation with your customer service rep to see what we can combine, especially crew cab. That's a great example. Drivetrain is the other one. There are cleanup things that we can do to support, but making sure. Eric, is infinite scroll automatically enabled? I believe so. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, it's a
Yep.
platform.
And if
So
infinite scroll isn't enabled for whatever reason, like we've mentioned, get in touch with your customer success manager. They'll be happy to kind of cut that on for you, and you'll be amazed at the difference that just that one toggle makes in terms of a user experience, not just for your customers, but even for the folks in your dealership themselves.
absolutely. So on this screen, the SRP sort, as Tony mentioned, you control the default. The customer can always change it. Now, remember, you might want something different for new versus used. One that we often get a question on that you should be considering, especially with model year turnovers, is how to highlight aged inventory. I want my oldest new cars to show up first. And Tony, that's done with featured vehicles, right?
Yep, that is done by feature with the term featured vehicles. So featured vehicles is DealerOn's way of having it in there where your oldest vehicle, oldest model year, I should say, vehicle will show towards the top of that SRP. And as we've kind of talked through here, makes sense, right? Those are probably the vehicles that you've had sitting on your lot. You want to move those. Would make the most sense to highlight those at the top of the SRP for clients to see.
Perfect. Yes. Special offers. Julia, I see your question in the chat. We're not covering specials today. We have so many ways we can highlight specials. So we might have to do a whole webinar on just specials, I think. In addition to SRP sort, let's show on the next slide. Here's tutorial on how to adjust filters yourself. But again, this is one thing. Partner with your CSM. Talk about strategies. They will give you insights on best practices. So this is great conversation. And then we've got one more on how to reorder. So
Yep.
lots of how-to slides, right, Tony?
Yep, lots of how-to slides. And when it comes to reordering. And I think the common theme that we're picking up on here is, I absolutely understand that some of you may want every filter available on every SRP. Some of you may want it more condensed, like keep it super, super high level. Your CSM will be able to kind of have that conversation with you and understand what works best for your specific needs. And as we've mentioned, your CSM is able to go into the CMS or even train you how to go into the CMS and adjust those at any time yourselves based on obviously the inventory that's coming in, or if we're heading into a busy period of year and you want to kind of have more filter options, takes a few minutes. Your CSM or a support team will be happy to take care of that for you. And you're able to rearrange these as well in terms of what your personal priorities are. If you want year to be the top filter, you can absolutely do that. If you want it to be more towards the middle, you can absolutely do that as well. So it's super customizable based on the needs of your individual dealerships.
Perfect. All right. So pricing and payment display. This is another making sure you know that you can control what defaults on your website. So for those of you with price stack payments, where you can toggle between buy, finance, and lease options, dealers control the default, right, Tony?
Yes. Dealers can control the default. If you're a dealer that, you're more heavy on the finance and lease, and maybe not many folks are going to come in and drop, $60,000 on a car, you can always have the buy off, because that's the buy is the cash price option. And we can have the finance and lease be available for display only.
Yep, this is one where we are going to want to make sure, everything Cesar talked about, that we have the proper fields mapping, that we have MSRP coming from here. We've got invoice price. We've got your special price. This is something, again, getting your pricing and the display locked is your CSM is here. But just a reminder, how many of your customers are paying cash for a vehicle? Probably not many. So defaulting to lease as your default view can show customers that lower payment option to make sure that it mirrors more of their shopping experience, which is financing or leasing. These are pretty moderately sized displays, but we know that some vehicles have a lot of incentives, have a lot of different pricing adjustments, and it can really lengthen, I keep doing this, but lengthen how long each vehicle listing on the SRP. So this next slide, Tony, it's one of my favorite and most underutilized options, and less is more, right?
Yep, you can absolutely, as Erin mentioned, where if you want the customer to understand how do you get to that, final price of 39,513 from 54, you're able to explain that. However, if you want that in detail, we're able to explain that and have that come out load expanded. Or if you want them to have a much more compressed version, kind of nice, neat, clean around the eyes, straight to the point, you're able to have that accordion folded in. That's also something that we can set by default according to, your preference as a dealer. Definitely for mobile, obviously you have a much smaller screen. You're not looking at it on, a 28-inch monitor or even a laptop. Yeah. Definitely recommend have it collapsed a little bit and have the customer, if they want to hit that more button, they can certainly do so to understand, how you get to that price point. Right. From a desktop perspective, I think it's personal preference. I see folks do one or the other. Some folks like to have the incentives broken down and listed upon loading the SRP. Others like to have it collapsed and, the customer can go and click on that more drop down if they wish.
Perfect. So, and this is, again, OEM compliant, so don't worry, having it collapsed, you're still covered, you're okay. But depending on the OEM, it can be quite a lengthy list. So, Tony, to your point, how many times do I have to do this to see more than one car? If it's twice per car, that might be too many, and the opportunity to shrink everything. So just a reminder, that's an easy toggle for your CSM. We've got CTAs here, call to actions, which are one of the most important features of the SRP. But depending on the dealership, I've seen quite a few CTAs. So we often get the question, how many should I have? What's the right number? Tony, what's your opinion?
My opinion, Erin, and I think it's, you don't want to have too few. You also don't want to have too many, right? Because we're going back to a user experience, on the general guidance that you'll hear from your customer success managers anywhere between 2 and 3 CTAs, right? And you can have those CTAs can display whatever it is that you prefer, right, according to your dealership and its individual needs. We like to keep them, between 2 and 3 and keep them minimal, right? I get it. We have a lot of, digital retailing, value my trade, all those types of things. I think those are super essential to have in there. Just be cognizant of kind of how your customers are viewing that. A lot of traffic comes in on phone. I've personally shopped for a vehicle on my phone, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, man, these guys have 8 CTAs. It is going back to the scrolling thing. It is a bit much to kind of go through every CTA and understand which one it is, but obviously work with your CSM and together understand what works best for your dealership and those needs. There's absolutely times of year where, during the summer, during the end of the year, where you probably need another CTA, right? Those are things that your CSM and our support team will be happy to add and adjust as needed. And then one of the other recommendations is if there is a CTA that's not specific to a VIN, so we want your trade, look at your financing options. We always recommend there is an option to move those to, say, an inline ad or even a banner running across the top of your SRP. And we'll cover that here in a bit. But it just you have the ability to catch the customer's eye with, hey, we want your trade without adding bulk to the CTA stack.
Yes, paralysis by analysis. If there's too many options, it's not a good thing. So less is more on the CTAs, and these are examples of how you can move some of those buttons. And especially too, I think of on desktop view, if I see value your trade, value your trade, value your trade, it's you don't care which car I choose if what I care about is value your trade. So moving those in line, and these are examples with our signals personalization tool, which is another underutilized. If you don't have signals, it's something to absolutely consider adding. If you do, make sure that you're reviewing these banners regularly and also making sure you understand some of the additional benefits that come with signals. Because one of the best ones is the For You recommendations, which to me feels like my Amazon experience where it says, hey, you might also like, or if I'm, Home Depot, I've been shopping a lot as spring comes. So what else does signals do for websites, Tony?
So for signals, when it comes to the filters, as you can see here in this image on the left-hand side, there is a filter here called For You. So signals uses cookie-based technology. If I'm a consumer and I'm on your website and it has signals and it knows that Tony likes to look at, Ford F-150 Lightnings that are in the color gray. What happens is the next time I come back onto your site, if I don't find what I'm looking for quite the first time, or if I've got something going on, there is a filter, and this is part of our Signal suite of tool technology, where it will highlight vehicles specifically for that customer. Right. So it understands that, Erin was looking for a white Ford Expedition. Now she didn't quite bite the bullet this go around, but if she ever comes back to our website, it's going to actually have those vehicles there and it'll be displayed front and center, even when she navigates to the SRP from a filter standpoint. And when she's on the SRP itself, if you see here this image on the right hand side, it'll highlight that vehicle with a little blue light bulb that says For You, meaning that you have searched for this vehicle before. This is a vehicle that you may like, very similar to the Amazon suggestion that Erin just made. Erin, I think you're muted.
I was coughing. It's got to happen once a webinar, or it's not a real DealerOn webinar. So that is one of my favorite features, but we get a lot of requests for this seamless lead capture. We can put a lead form directly in those inline ads that we showed, right?
Yep, you can actually put them in. So if a customer clicks into that ad or that inline ad, it doesn't take them anywhere. It stays right on that page and they submit their lead and it comes straight to your CRM or however it is you have it set up on your backend.
Yeah. And Luis, so the customer doesn't reset the For You. It's one of the, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it's personalization in action, meaning as they are clicking in the filters, as they are choosing vehicles going to the VDP, the system's going to recommend it. So what we do have different features that the customer can control is saving a vehicle, comparing different vehicles. So the customers compare those, but with Signal's personalization, it truly is that technology making sure that we're recommending the right vehicles based on their search inquiries. Absolutely. So lots of great stuff on the SRP. Let's move to the VDP as we talk about inventory management. And you've said it a few times. I think it's really important. We look at inventory all day long, and typically it's at our desk on a giant screen, or if you're me, 3 screens as if you were running NASA or something. Um, Customers are often on mobile, and customers are looking at inventory differently than the way Tony, you or I are. So that's the number one tip is you need to view it through the customer's eyes. And oftentimes that means asking a family member, what do you think of this? How do you interact? But what are some of the key recommendations that your team is making with dealers and that dealers should take away today?
Yep. So from a VDP standpoint, and I'm going to touch on this in my next slide, is a feature called Sticky Sidebar. And also ensuring that the stock numbers and the VIN numbers is easy for the customer to reference. So usually, if you know on the VDPs, you have your pictures on the left-hand side, you have your pricing and CTAs on the right. Usually somewhere under those images, it'd be super helpful to have kind of the stock number and VIN number. And I would personally bold it so that way it kind of stands out more to the eyes. I wouldn't have it super huge, but at least large enough for someone to legibly read and understand and reference. And then when it comes to photos, 82% of the photo activity on the VDP are actual dealer photographed, uploaded photos that come in through the feed onto the website. You also want to bear in mind to make sure that you have quality photos of both the interior and exterior. That goes a long way. I'm sure everyone here has at one point heard the old adage, "Hey, I saw a photo of this online, but it looks totally different in person," right? So I certainly think quality is of the utmost priority when it comes to photos. And then if you're able to, and if it's your preference, incorporate a 360 spin video. A lot of the car shopping, especially in today's day and age, is done digitally. There's so many things that folks are making up their minds on a vehicle almost before they even walk into a dealership. Having that kind of 360 view virtual, even if it's virtual, goes a long way. They're able to see kind of how the car looks and start to, more importantly, visualize themselves in that car when they haven't even left the comfort of their home. And in terms of CTAs on the VDP, kind of touching, going back to kind of some of the same practices on the SRP, one of the biggest things that we at times run into on VDPs is we have redundant CTAs, like a get price and request a quote. That, to me, if I were a CSM, I'd probably have a conversation with the dealer and say, hey, let's look at consolidating this, right? Cool. If you want, both CTAs, let's consolidate one into maybe a get price. And is there something else that we could use and generate to have another lead driver for that fourth CTA? Or do we do away with it completely, dependent on how many CTAs you already have existing? And then also to spot check in your CRM that different forms are being treated differently, right? And what I mean by that is obviously you wouldn't treat a service and parts form the same way you treat a new car inquiry form or the way you treat a used lead. And if not, make sure you're reducing the variations of your forms as well.
Yeah, this is mine in my previous life, because I'm at the age where I can say I have previous lives. I was an in-store dealership consultant, and every day I'd get into CRMs and look at that lead management. If you're getting in, hey, request your e-price, and you've got this button and you ask for the lead, and then you don't actually give them a price, why do you have that button? Or you don't address price. So ensuring that things are functional and that you're replying to leads differently, that's the whole purpose of having different ones. You mentioned Sticky Sidebar, which I am being told is not the official name of it. It is called 2-column scroll.
Yep.
Fine. We do have a video in the deck. I think it's being a little funky. So, but we've got instructions. Oh, there it goes. Perfect. This is what it is. I think Sticky Sidebar is a better name, but whatever, 2-column scroll. This is what it looks like in action on desktop. So we always want those CTAs. We always want those vehicle details in view, but it still allows the shopper to scroll and look at additional information.
Yep.
So
And as Aaron mentioned, like it's a fantastic feature, right? Because as if I'm a customer and I'm looking through, what features does this particular vehicle have? What are the highlights? What are kind of all the specs? I can do that with the two column scroll feature without having to scroll back up and ask myself, how much was this? Where do I put in the lead? All that is right there as the customer scrolls. If that's something you're not taking advantage of today, reach out to your CSM. They'll be
Yeah.
happy to turn that on for you, and like I mentioned, you'll be amazed at the difference that it makes, just from a customer perspective.
Yep. And Chris, I think Chris put something in the chat, also agrees with sticky sidebar. So I'm sticking it to my product director over here. But well, I think I might do a poll actually by the end of it. So does it work the same on mobile? I don't believe sticky sidebar is affected by mobile, meaning it's one scroll because mobile's a little small of a screen to have two.
Correct.
So that's the only caveat. But for the desktop users, and in some parts of the country, if you look at your analytics, still a significant amount of traffic on desktop. So we are a mobile first company, but making sure that you're looking at your analytics so that you know where to be viewing inventory and affecting. Andrew's got a fantastic question. Do we have a best CTA verbiage option based on DealerOn sites? Anything with availability will always work. So check or confirm availability. We've gone back and forth about that if it's check or confirm, but availability in it will function the best. Other than that, this is something that we are actually, spoiler alert, working on some studies right now. So stay tuned. And I think in a few months, I will have something to publish there. But talk to your CSM because they will have some best practices on the group of dealers that they work at. And yes, we share information as a team. So some fantastic ideas there. Get ePrice feels very 10 years ago. And again, if you're not going to give an ePrice, don't have the button because you're setting yourself up for failure. So availability, test drive. With digital retailing, I think we know customers aren't necessarily completing the purchase online. So don't scare them with buy online unless if the OEM has a rule about the CTA, follow the OEM's rule, please. But personalize your payment, things that put it in their, in their wallets and get it started with a shopping experience. Those perform quite well as well. So we've been saving this. Tony, thank you so much. For those of you who did meet with us at NADA, we talked about one of our new tools, which is DealerOn Sidekick. And Javier, you are on the product team who is making this come to life. So Sidekick is a suite of products because every hero needs a sidekick, and your DealerOn website is that hero for you. And we've got a few different sidekicks that go along with this suite. So on the next slide, here's the list. This is currently being released in beta. We've got chat, insights, and compliance sidekick, which we're not going to talk about today, but merchandising sidekick is one that fits right in with today's topic. We do have limited slots in this beta, so reach out with questions. And I think after you hear Javier talk about what merchandising sidekick is, you're gonna want to reach out. So let's talk about it. Javier, you're one of the brains on the team building this. What the heck does it do?
Awesome. So yeah, let's talk more about the merchandising sidekick. We can go over to the next slide here. Our goal with this product is to help dealers present inventory online with a more consistent, more professional look, but without the extra effort. So that means using the same photos that you already have, whether those are dealer taken lot photos or stock images. The way that this works is that the merchandising sidekick will automatically enhance each photo for better lighting, higher resolution, and improved framing, so the vehicle is the focus. And then it will place the vehicle in a nice professional studio style backdrop. So the value here is that the images not only look nicer and professional, but also that this system helps you as the dealer deliver a more consistent presentation across your inventory without adding a bunch of manual work on your team or asking the team to learn yet another tool.
Yeah.
And once those images, Oh, go ahead.
No, you hit on something I want to be very clear on. No additional work for the team. There's a lot of fantastic vendors out there. We partner with many of them who put together a fantastic service related to this. But often it can be with an extra lift where you've got to take specific photos, use specific technology. To be clear, Merchandising Sidekick works with the photos you're already taking and already sending us, correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
So, in building on that, once the images look great, we can build on actually something more immersive. So let's go to the next slide, and here's where we're headed next. So in this example here, what we are going to show you guys for a moment is what we're developing with our beta partners, and it's an AI-generated 360 spin video with a narration. So we take the same exterior and interior imagery that is on the website, the stills, and we also take the vehicle details that are already on the vehicle details page, and we assemble it in a short spin with a narrated voiceover. And the narration will be calling out the key features of the vehicle so that they don't get missed. So let's just, Tony, if we can play maybe 15 seconds here of the video.
Yeah. And we didn't share sound on purpose because then you couldn't hear me and what are we doing? But there is a narration, that very natural language happening. So this was put together automatically. While it's playing, Javier, Michael has a question. And I love this, will the sidekicked photos push to third parties if in our export? Will we export those with the feed?
Yeah, so the improved enhanced imagery that they're going to be exported along with the other images that you
Perfect.
already have.
And how many photos does it take to make this video? So if are we asking dealers to up it and they have to send us 100 pictures, or how many did it take to put this together?
For this one, it was about 10 photos,
Okay.
but we are still,
Wow.
testing this out, and the idea is, we want to work with you guys to
10's a
to
solid number. Like if you ask me to take more than 10 of a base model of some vehicles, you're pushing it. So I think that's fantastic. Good questions. And these are questions and this feedback that you're asking, we're going to be collecting during the beta and enhancing the product. But can dealers change the voice or change the option narration? I think we're working on that through the beta, right?
Yes, yeah, the
Yeah.
voiceover choice is going to be a
Yeah.
part of that.
Absolutely. This is so cool. It's one of the cool things. You were running around, as was Dale and Admire, who's been in the chat, and myself with capes at NADA answering questions. And this is one that's really exciting. Eric has a question. Will the photos need to be uploaded directly to the site, or can they still use vAuto, whoever they're using for their photos? Will those photos work? Yes, right?
Yeah, yeah. The whatever way you're getting the photos onto your website right now, we take those and enhance them.
Absolutely. So truly, no additional lift, no change in your process. Everything you're doing, same way. So this was exciting. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us. Javier's going to hang out in the chat if anybody's got more questions on merchandising. But I promised some information for GM dealers. And, if for those of you who will be in Las Vegas here in the month of March for the GM Global Business Conference, we will be there. I'm there next week. And we are going to be talking a lot about our Smart Inventory Manager. So Dale, pop back onto the screen here for us, share that glorious beard, and let's talk about SIM. What the heck is it?
Happy to be here. And yes, SIM is going to allow GM dealers to not have to access D2C2 if they want to stay in their current workflows and work with their current inventory provider. One of the best things about SIM and its integration with GM's DVIM network is that we can take any inventory coming in from any inventory provider and pass that along. And also you can go ahead and work in SIM to do your pricing and discounts, to do automated pricing rules, and to actually upload photos that can then get enhanced by our new Sidekick. And so I think that's fabulous. The DVIM integration does not add or delete actual vehicles. That is still managed within GMs when they're pulling your DMS, but you can hide a vehicle via SIM and also add pricing, add incentives, add photos, and add your description.
Yeah,
Next
so
slide.
It truly is an inventory manager as you move you know, and there are a lot of our dealers right now do partner with a vAuto. They partner with an inventory tool for significant other features, but many are handling their inventory in the website tool itself. So for those customers who might be utilizing a different tool, Sim can manage that. And I know you've mentioned it, and I want you to really highlight on it the benefits related to D2C2 specifically for GM dealers.
Yeah, so those four items that I did discuss, the updating your pricing, you're creating your dealer offers, you're uploading your photos and setting your description, that will go into our DVM process to GM, and then that gets updated in D2C2. So you are not going to have to re-log into D2C2 once you've either completed those actions in SIM or your current inventory provider if you connect with our DVM process. And so it's really going to save you not have to go in there into that third application to get everything done. You can get it all done within SIM.
Perfect. And Michael has a question. How quickly will price changes hide vehicles publishing to the live site?
We have seen it as quickly as 15 to 30 minutes. We do have real-time transactions that do go over to GM, but it is also up to GM to process those D2C2 transactions and get it back to us. And so we have seen it as quick as 15 to 30 minutes when everything is working great. But sometimes it can take an hour to 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jean's got a question, and it's a great one. Listen, is this going to solve all the world's problems and there's never ever going to be an issue on a feed or anything? No. You know, it's absolutely something that you need to monitor. There are some global issues, you know, that are outside of our control often. But Jean, I see yours. I'm going to take your question offline so I can look into it to give you a more qualified answer. But, you know, you, Dale, I know are always working along with our OEM team and our fantastic data support team with GM to make sure, you know, and we are one of only a small number of tools. And I think we are the only approved website vendor in the GM program with our own inventory tool that's approved. So, you know, things to consider. A lot of the photo capabilities that we talked about, you know, yes, with merchandising, it'll all work together. If we've got your merchandise photos, if you're uploading your own photos into SIM, we can apply merchandising sidekick. But some of the best features are related to imports and exports too. So I think you've got some of these here. Yeah, perfect. Talk through capabilities here.
So yeah, as I said, with the DVM connection, we can go ahead and hide a vehicle from displaying on the website. And so that's with our markable, unmarkable toggles that you would see right there in the listing when you first get in. And so that's an easy way to make sure that if you don't want to advertise that vehicle, you can make it unmarketable. We'll get that transaction over to GM and then it will get updated on your website. For photos, we have a way to either bulk upload multiple vehicles at one time, or you can do one at a time. And with the drag and drop, you can reorder, you can delete, and it's really up to you how you want to rearrange your photos. We've given you the tools that will allow you to do that. The photos are also mobile friendly. And so you will be able to open the mobile app, go to a vehicle, and then just take that image of a vehicle, and that will upload directly to that vehicle right away. It does not give you any editability, but you can still drag and drop, and then it can get enhanced via our sidekick, and it will be perfect.
Awesome.
Again, as I go ahead,
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, please, you go ahead.
And I was going to say, as I said, is with SIM, you can still continue to use your current inventory imports. We do have 100+ integrations with vendors, and if you're a vendor that we don't have an integration with, we'll go ahead and work with that vendor and try to get that integration going for you. And we do export out to 300+ partners as well.
Absolutely. Those exports, that's really powerful again for dealers, especially if you're a single point and you're paying a different tool to manage some of this. You know, let's talk about if we can move that in-house. For GM dealers, I can't believe I didn't mention this yet. SIM is a part of every GM website package that we have right now. So make sure that we're taking advantage of that. Some of the biggest things that dealers love it for, though, is the pricing adjustment capabilities. So I've heard you on training calls talk about, well, if you want it this way, you can do that. There's so many different capabilities. So give us kind of a crash course on this here on the next slide.
So actually, this slide, we're going to talk about the abilities of our incentives
I got
and stuff.
excited. Sorry.
The next one will go into the pricing rules, but this one, And so when you access them, there's two main areas that you'd probably be accessing. There's going to be the inventory listing that's going to have all your inventory information. And then we have a new incentive listing listed within SIM, and that's going to house all of your dealer provided or dealer created offers that you want to advertise. And so when for the incentive listing, you can go ahead and do a dealer discount and offers. We give you multiple ways to go ahead and create that discount. We have a straight cash value. We have a percentage off MSRP. You can actually even use another price field if you want. And so there's many ways to create a discount. And then that does give you a way to do your title, your description, and your disclaimer as well. And that gets all fed over it via the DVIN process. We also have you up on your accessories and fees. We have an accessory one that does go over to GM for your lift trucks and everything else. So you can go ahead and add your accessories there. And then we do have a fee type as well. Those will increase the prices.
Yes, that's important. I want to hit on that. We can do your discounts for sure, but if you are putting the Mac Daddy lift kits on some of these trucks and you need to list it out, raising that price or listing fees is very easy. Absolutely.
Yes. And the great thing about the special tool or the incentive tool is that it has great filterability. So you can set your criteria based off of your make model, but then we also give you lot age or model code or option codes. And so it's very flexible to kind of get down to the specific inventory that you want to capture for that discount or accessory. And you can go ahead and set it for it to automatically add when a vehicle comes in and matches that criteria, it'll automatically apply to that special. And so you don't have to manage that from day to day if you want to set up that way.
Perfect. Will and all the discounts or anything here that we're talking about, it will show up in the math box, correct?
Correct. This is adjusting the math box in today's world. In the future, we're looking to kind of try to connect this also to the special pages on the DealerOn site. But right now, we're just adjusting the cash math box today. The one thing I do want to say is in inventory listing, you can do one-time price changes. We have it either at the vehicle level or we do have a bulk tool that does allow you to bulk reprice your prices and get sent to DVIM. The last one is we do have pricing rules. That is more of a pricing rule generation that will automatically price your inventory as it comes in. And so we can go to the next slide for that. So yeah, so as I was saying with the pricing rule, again, it has a bunch of criteria that you can set. This one is showing you that it's going to go ahead and subtract $1,000 from MSRP for all your Tahoes, and that new calculated price will become your starting featured price for that vehicle. And so again, these are rules that are applied as inventory is brought into our system. You have a bunch of different criteria that you can go ahead and capture that bucket of list. Then we give you a way to either add or subtract from a price field, and then we calculate that price and display that as your featured price or as sent to GM as your featured price.
Yes, like this is a time saver. And you've got the example here on the screen where if you want every Tahoe that comes in that is a 2025 to have $1,000 discount, boom, applied. You don't have to come back in and do it. Other ways we've done it, and I'm thinking back years and all the times we've done trainings on this, is aged inventory. You can do it for used. If a vehicle hits X days old, discount it by 5%, things like that, right? Like there's a lot of different ways that this can be configured based on those multiple strategies. I know we've got it there down to the model code. Is that correct?
I believe we do have model code in that.
So.
And I'm trying to remember. They're not completely all the same filters, but I believe model code is in both of them. The one thing I do want to point out is if a brand new car comes out that you want to advertise at MSRP, but you want all of your other cars to be at an internet price, this tool is going to allow you to do that because then what you could do is do a rule for that vehicle and just have MSRP, have no adjustments to it, and we'll go ahead and put MSRP as your starting price. And so this kind of gives you a way to really hone in and have a strategy within SIM for your pricing.
Absolutely. And a lot of this can be managed by the dealers themselves, or of course, our fantastic teams. And I mean, I say teams because it truly is. Your CSM is always your first stop. That's your person. I know many of them are on the call here. But our data support team, our customer support team, everybody is here to help. Chris, your question, will this follow manufacturer map rules? Listen, you're still the boss of your pricing. So if you set some wackadoodle rule in here to set vehicles $10,000 below MSRP, I can't imagine you ever would. Ultimately, the map pricing is going to still fall to the dealer, but we will always work with you. If you ask us to put something that is a little questionable, we're going to question you back. So,
But I do want to
oh, go ahead,
add
please.
something to that. We do have a safeguard built into the rule where we do ask for a minimum price and a maximum price. And so if a calculation goes out of that minimum or maximum price, we won't calculate that and we'll leave the price as is. And so you can go ahead and set your map. It's still up to you to set it, but you can go ahead and set your min and max to the map pricing so we don't calculate outside of that value for you.
Well, that's new information for me, so I just learned something new. That is lovely. I love a good safeguard. Protect me from myself, I like to say.
Yeah.
So
since we're calculating it, we just wanted a little bit
Yeah.
of safeguard just in case we got something really strange in, because
Just
we are
thinking.
dependent on what is coming in from your pricing. And so if you accidentally did like a 1,500 instead of 15,000, we didn't want to calculate any other thing if it's wrong. And so we kind of kept that price range there for you guys to kind of control what gets calculated and not.
I have a horror story from my dealer days of we took in a Cobra on trade that didn't have an engine or a transmission. So the amount we paid for it was like ridiculous low because it was missing a few things. And it kept pushing. I'll date myself, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So it kept pushing to the website. So I would get so many leads about this extremely cheap Cobra. Something like that could have protected me from myself, I think. So wonderful. If you've got more sim questions, ask them in the chat here. But I wanted to go through some resources. And again, we will send this deck. So as we mentioned, lots of questions about DealerOn Sidekick beta. We do have limited slots remaining. Reach out though, because we are going to be launching this here shortly. So I want to make sure anybody interested, we can go through a full demo. The chat sidekick, especially, yes, it's website chat and it's real natural language. Our insight sidekick is fantastic. It allows you really in our back end with all of our data hub reporting to say, hey, which of my vehicles is performing the best? And to have information, pushed to you. It's fantastic. It does so much more than that. And then compliance sidekick, talk about protecting us from ourselves. Some fantastic features there. So we didn't talk about all of them. If you're interested in information, you can put a note in the chat or email us at info@dealeron.com and I will make sure you get info. Speaking about beta, we have one more tool releasing in beta. We do have spots remaining for this as well, on prompt. So AI search, as it continues to grow, identifying how your team is showing up, how your website is showing up, how your dealership is showing up, for what prompts, where are you not, where's my competition showing up and I'm not. This is a fantastic new tool. It not only will monitor the prompts that matter most, but it'll show you those areas where your website is missing some content maybe, or could use some content lift to make sure you are showing up for AI search. So this is real nerdy, but it applies to us all. And it is so interesting. If you want a demo on this, reach out to me as well. We'll get you some info. We mentioned Signals, which is our personalization tool. This is something that does not come standard in most website packages, but is absolutely something that you might want information on. We talked about the benefits of those inline ads and the For You features. So again, reach out. Your CSM can give you information on all of this or point you in the right direction as well. So don't feel like you got to come straight to me. Go to your person. Dale, specific to SIM, we've got, and not, actually, let me go back. We've got this DealerOn Resource Center. You can move to the next slide. We have a ton of how-to and DIY here. So we've got the link here to the Resource Center where if you want to learn about any of the things we've talked about today or more, we've got a lot of fantastic tools. But specific to SIM, go to the next slide, and I listed them out here. These are all the tutorials you and the team partnered on about how to do things in SIM. So if you want to bulk update pricing, if you want to create, lock a field for the entire network, look at this. 14 specific to SIM. We've got all this. We'll email this to everybody. So, hey, listen, we are a 59. We did a fantastic job. I was very worried about getting through it. Thank you for all the fantastic interaction in the chat. Please reach out if you have questions. And with that, everyone have a great day.